Hello, everybody. This is Paul Costello here, and though we were originally intending to do this live during the Kindness Festival, uh, technology decided otherwise. So here's at least some attempt to present to you and be part of the celebration. I'm so happy to be part of this. I think the idea that Scott and his friends have come up with is ingenious and a much needed tonic right now. So I'm into stories. I run Storywise, and my work in the last 25 years has involved trying to convince people about the power of stories and how they affect identity and destiny and community. And when you understand all that, when you grow in some narrative literacy, you can be more effective in dealing with change and dealing with conflict. That's kind of the heart of my work. So the fundamental assumption behind all that is that I kind of believe that and fascinated by the way stories work in the world to weave the fabric of meaning and how that works. And so coming into the door of a kindness festival is to say, when I'm opening the door, I'm opening the door on what is the story of kindness and what stories does an act of kindness create, and what are the kinds of stories that create kindness, a kinder world. How does kindness work in the world to weave a fabric of meaning which is in any way different from what we experience? So that's where I come in at this celebration. What are the stories of kindness? And we're all sharing them, and I'm listening to some this morning, and they're amazing. But part of what makes them amazing, I think, is because they're unusual. They're a surprise. They're not what we expect. And that goes to what we normally say, a random act of kindness. You go to the McDonald's drive-through to get a hamburger, and you discover that the person in the car ahead of you has paid for your meal. Wow. Or like what happened last year in Australia, where I'm from, and my son was in a cafe, and three emergency workers came up to get coffee. They were from the local bushfire brigade, and Ben got up and refused to let them pay. I mean, you've done so much to save my property last summer during the terrible fires. I'm going to pay for your coffee. Those kind of random acts of kindness are just beautiful. They make our day. We'll tell people about that. They generate a story. They certainly do. But my work has been around dealing with some of the most protracted conflict zones of the world. And I've come to understand that there is a random act of kindness, but there's also a deeper level at which that kindness becomes a radical act. And maybe even not just a radical act, but a revolutionary act. Because you see, the theory of change which we propagate in the world is if you want to change the world, you're going to have to change the story. And so I want to weigh today the value of kindness. How much weight does the act of kindness, the culture of kindness, create in terms of the possibility of flipping the world over? What does radical kindness look like? Well, I worked in Israel and Palestine, I've worked in Northern Ireland, I've worked in South Africa. I have lots and lots of stories, but the core of it is bringing Israelis and Palestinians, Protestants, Catholics, black, white, colored together to Washington for a crucible experience of an intense summer shared with host families, shared with internships on Capitol Hill in Congress and so on, to forge a new shared experience that would not be possible back in the region. And for those young leaders who participate to witness to the stories of hope and the stories of the future they want to create. Let me share one story, a story of kindness, a story of radical kindness. It's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's in occupied Palestine on the West Bank. And there's an 18-year-old kid called Tomer who's drafted into the army, and he's got his uniform on and his machine gun, and he's hungry and he's tired and he's bored and he's falling asleep, and he's supposed to keep an eye out. He's vigilant because security is ultimately the value, like keep people safe. So he sees somebody coming towards the checkpoint, and it looks in the distance like someone with a wagon. There's a donkey or something. As it gets closer, it's an old man with a with a cartload of melons. So he has to check IDs. He has to make sure the melons don't contain bombs. He has to do all the normal things, but he's half asleep. So he goes through that perfunctorily, and he's not even making eye contact with this old man. But the old man is not having any of it. So the old man pierces him in the eye, and he can just see. Show me your identity. And the old man looks at him and says, hungry, huh? Toma shoves, no regard. Gives George your ID, give me your ID. He looks in his eye again, the old man looks in his eye again and says, you look tired, son. You need some sleep. And Thomas flips him away. Pass, go. Thomas doesn't want to be bothered with it. And as the old man trundles through with the car through the checkpoint, he kind of looks back, and he knows it's against the rules, but he sort of says to Toma, so nobody else could hear it, just says, I've got the best melons. You need something to eat. That's what I gave my son this morning because he couldn't get to sleep too. My son's just like you. He doesn't eat enough and he doesn't sleep enough. Here, I'll leave a little melon on the side of the road. And with that, off he went. Now, Toma told that story and suddenly thought, what just happened there? What just happened there? I'm a soldier. I've got a gun. I've got a uniform. I'm in a fortress. My job is to scare that person, to make sure that there's no, that they feel like, they're under suspicion. And that old man didn't care about the gun and didn't care about the uniform, just looked at him straight in the eye, said, like you, I got a son like yours. You're hungry and you're tired and you're bored. And Toma went on to say, my job as a soldier in any army is to treat people as objects. It's not to treat them, they're not, you're not a soldier to do therapy. But he should have been scared of me, but he refused to allow me to treat him as anything less than human. He treated me as human, and I kind of resisted the temptation in a way. But from then on, that act of kindness that gets so against the grain of a conflict where people are armed and behind walls, and the whole point of the structure and the institution and the culture is to breed division and to breed hatred. Otherwise, what's the point? How would I justify killing you or arresting you if it wasn't that you were the enemy, that you were dangerous? So an act of kindness in that sense is like a grenade going off around the possibility that one human to another, everything else doesn't make any difference. An act of kindness suddenly pierced this world, this structure, this coherent world picture, and sort of said, it doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of what I want to say, that an act of kindness in a war zone, it's like, we say you kill somebody with kindness, but kindness in a war zone can get you killed. But here's an example that of the program and witnessing that Toma went on. He went on to do leadership and work and peace and so on. Somehow that little act of kindness that he shared turned him around he wasn't a soldier anymore. I mean, he still was in uniform and he still had a gun, but he had a new weapon. So I leave you with the quest to say that some parts of our world, your world, my world, in my American world, people hating and dividing and protesting and shooting. An act of kindness is not just a random act anymore. It's a radical act. It's an act that leads to a revolution and just makes us feel, just imagine if this is the story of the world, that kindness is no longer the exception, that kindness is the norm, kindness is the rule. I think human beings, somehow God built us that way. Somehow the plans got a little bit messed up along the way. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating, and I wish you all the very, very best.